humanitarian operations, particularly dealing with mothers and with their young children. And he joins us now. Hi there, David.
Good morning.
So just paint a picture for us, if you would, of where you are and what conditions are like.
So Przemysl station. Przemysl is a fairly small town, really, about 60,000 people. I think that's about right normally here. But it's had about 1.5 million that's come through here on the refugees in the last 4 weeks. So the town is already pretty tired. The station itself is relatively small, and it's the kind of funnel point for the refugees that are coming across. They come either by train right the way through to the station itself or by bus from the border. And it's kind of a first aid stop, really. It's a place where the idea is to move them on as quickly as possible to the next point of destination, but for it to be a pause of sanctuary. So it's about mothers feeding their babies. It's about hopefully giving them a little bit of sleep. It's about feeding them. It's about medication. It's about all of those things and trying to give them a sense of confidence that they're safe now and actually move them on to their next destination.
Just give us a sense of some of the people you've met. Tell us some of the stories of that the women have shared with you about what they've been through.
It's heartbreaking, to be honest. It's really, really, very painful. There are so many stories, and I think one of the difficulties in trying to capture any of these things is you try to kind of paint a picture which applies to all, and of course everyone's an individual. But you know, I just recount one of just many, many stories, maybe, and that I can think of. A young mother who arrived to me at 2:00 in the morning. She had been travelling for 5 days. She had a baby who was 2 months old. She had 2 small children with her. She had been in a bunker down in Mariupol under bombardment for a long time. The little boy was so traumatized when he came that when somebody closed the door really loudly behind, he screamed. He put his hands on his ears and cried. And she was walking around really just in a daze, not really knowing what to do. And she was so unbelievably just grateful and pleased that we could do just really, really simple things. Find a Pampers nappy for her. For me to be able to find some from powdered milk and water for her because her breast milk had dried up because she'd been under such trauma for a number of months. And for her, it was actually a better end story because she knew where she was going. It was fortunate. She already had her husband's partner's a partner in the business in Frankfurt, and so she was en route to Frankfurt where she was going to be met. And I'm pretty sure by now, you know, she will feel even more secure. For others, it's not as secure because they don't know where they're going, and that's even more painful in a way. They had similar experiences, but they come here, they really don't know where they're going. And then in the background of all this, and as was the case with her father, her husband, her young brother, were all left behind fighting and trying to get out of Mariupol. So that's just one story, but there are just so many stories. And as I said, it's very difficult to kind of just put all that together as a common picture because these are individuals with their own individual stories and heartbreaks.
Of course. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I just wonder, you're clearly there to give them the practical support that you mentioned. Clearly, these people, the women and children, are very traumatised as well. I'm just wondering what support they're able to get to cope with that trauma and to process it.
Well, I mean, we've got to put it into perspective that here is an immediate transition point. So, you know, there's a limit to what can happen here. But to give you an example in that particular case, because if I'm brutally honest with you, I felt out of my depth with the anxiety of that young boy, and he was going to stay with us for 12 hours. So I was able to access a German child psychologist who, is out here as a volunteer, and I had him over. And, you know, he spent some time with me just teaching me really very basic techniques to help this little boy just calm down for those immediate actions. But these are traumatized people that are going to need help for a very long time. And one of the things that really, really concerns me, if I'm honest, is, you know, I to be honest, I'm so busy here. I've not really seen much of the press. I just hear bits and pieces over the last 2 weeks. But it does worry me that nations really need to understand what they're getting and you know, these people coming over, you know, people talk about families and people talk about this, but actually you know, it's going to be a lot of young mums coming over and a lot of really small children. You know, they're not going to be working, a lot of them. They are going to have a lot of, you know, serious demands on them. Their husbands and families may come back, but actually they may be killed. They, you know, and families may have to deal with that whilst they actually get into the nations where they finally settle.
And David, what is the picture regarding people like you on the ground? Is there an organised structure there, lots of aid agencies and charities working together, or is it just people with lots of goodwill just trying to help out best they can?
Do you know, I really hesitate to be critical in these situations because, you know, go back to what I just said, it's a town which has got 60,000 people and it's managed to get, you know, 1.5 million people through. So it's very difficult to be critical like that. But, and I think you probably realise there was a but, it isn't easy to operate here. The communication is really, really poor. It's very difficult to see a top-down strategy. I really don't quite understand where the big international organisations are. They're not visible to me. That's not to say they're not somewhere, but they're not here at this immediate point. Maybe there's some of them on the border. I don't know what they're doing. But, you know, last night I was out of the station because there's been some changes in the station in terms of the baby unit that I operated. And they've got an enormous site here called the Tesco site. Well, I was there last night, and it's kind of an even bigger transition sort of holding place. I mean, there's 2,500 people there. In one room, there's 400 people side by side in camp beds. There are no shower facilities there. There are a few portaloos outside. There's no obvious organisation. Today, I'm being sick and I've got diarrhoea, and that's because there's no systematic cleaning or systematic setup there. It desperately needs, I think, a proper kind of international aid organisation or something, a structure that can give it a proper structure. And I think that's probably not. I mean, and it's the sort of structure that I saw when I was a NATO officer and spent, you know, a short period of time out in the Balkans. And I think one of the problems, or one of the differences, is that this isn't like the normal humanitarian crisis in a way. People are coming across. The first wave have often had places to go. It's not been about establishing camps. But nevertheless, these transition places, some people can be there for 4 or 5 days. And most of them, admittedly, have been transferred through within 24 hours. But it really needs some clear strategic direction. And as for volunteers, you know, I mean, I turned up here as a volunteer. I just found my way across because I had a bit of time to help. No real briefings anyway. You know, I wasn't checked, to be honest, to get in either. And really, my network was a network that I had in Poland through my sporting connections with wheelchair rugby and various other things. And the Polish people themselves have welcomed me with open arms. You know, I've had mattresses on floors. I've slept in the station. I've been the Polish network, the people themselves have been fantastic in terms of looking after me, but there isn't a structure.
David, thank you for speaking to us this morning, and I hope you get better soon as well. Thank you for sharing your experiences of what's happening there at Przemysl station. It's on the Poland-Ukraine border. That was David Pondy's, a former Naval and NATO officer who has gone out to, well, off his own back. He said he had a bit of spare time, so he's going to go and help some of the very traumatised mothers and young children making their way across the border.
Coming up next, we will be